the origins of Holy Week in Andalucía fade into the mists of time. But the first processions would not spread across our land until the early 16th century. It was then that the first Nazarenes emerged, carrying candles that pierced the darkness of streets with scarcely any visibility, leaving a sinister scene in their wake. Alongside these brothers of light were the blood brothers, or disciplinants, men who paraded with their backs bare, whipping themselves with lashes and sharp objects until they bled, flagellating themselves to identify with the pains of Christ in his passion. A pivotal moment occurred during this era, with the journey of the Marquis of Tarifa to Jerusalem in 1521. That trip left the Marquis so awestruck that once he arrived in the Holy Land, he counted the steps from Pilate's palace to Mount Calvary. And back in Seville, he named his palace Casa de Pilatos, reproducing the steps he had counted in Jerusalem towards the outskirts of Seville, reaching an old shrine there established, the Cruz del Campo, which he chose as the end of his Via Crucis. That primitive shrine became a site of pilgrimage for the first brotherhoods, which back then still did not carry floats or thrones. Instead, the penitents carried crucifixes or small platforms borne by a few people. This image would soon become customary, spreading throughout Andalucía. Undoubtedly, those primitive blood brothers and Nazarenes of light, more than 500 years ago, must have projected an awe-inspiring image that today only artificial intelligence can help us to imagine.
On a stormy night, an old man was searching for the way to Jaén. Soaked by the rain, he spotted a light. It was a white hunting lodge surrounded by olive trees. The grandfather knocked on its door and asked for shelter for the night. The landlords gave him a roof and a bed, although the grandfather had nothing to pay them with. Seated in front of the fire, the man found a way to express his gratitude for their hospitality. He saw a large oak knoll and exclaimed, "What a beautiful image of Jesus could be made from it." He then asked to take it to his room and requested not to be disturbed. No noise came from the room throughout the night. The landlords did not dare to check what was happening. The pilgrim showed no signs of life. They called at his door and peered through the crack, but found no response. They broke down the door, and what they saw inside left them speechless. The old man had disappeared, and in his place, they found the image of Jesus of Nazareth, the sculpture that the grandfather had made from that oak log. Since then, the Nazarene became one of the epicenters of devotion, not only in Jaén, but throughout Andalucía.
Did you know that one of the greatest Baroque sculptors in our history was a woman? For a long time, her husband had to sign her works so she could sell them. This woman was none other than the court sculptor for two kings of Spain. Luisa Ignacia Roldán, popularly known as La Roldana, was the most important sculptor and imaginer of Holy Week, despite facing everything against her achievement. She started working in her father's workshop, the most prestigious in the 17th century Seville, at the height of the Baroque era. The whole family of Pedro Roldán worked in the workshop, which is why the master took it badly when his daughter Luisa fell in love with one of his employees, Luis Antonio de los Arcos, and eloped to marry him. First in Cadiz, where she left very important works, and then in Madrid. Luisa moved from her father's control to her husband's, who signed the contracts for the works she executed. This did not prevent the delicacy and expressiveness of La Roldana's carvings from becoming famous, even leading to work for two kings, Charles II and Philip V. These prestigious clients, despite everything, allowed Luisa to end up dying in absolute poverty and misery. The Virgin of Solitude of Puerto Real, the Star of Seville, the Thieves of the Paso de los Caballos of Santa Catalina, or the Exe Homo of the Cathedral of Cadiz, are some of the jewels of sculpture that came from the hands of La Roldana, an Andalusian who managed to write her name in golden letters in the history of universal art.
It was the year 1800, when the bandit Juan Zamarrilla carried out his many raids and outrages throughout the mountains of Ronda. His deeds were spoken of far and wide, and his robberies and crimes became the stuff of legend, always at the helm of 50 men who followed him loyally. With each assault he committed, his fame grew, even reaching the capital, Malaga. In response, the authorities of the time decided to capture him, and a party of soldiers was dispatched in pursuit. Near Antequera, they managed to corner the group of bandits. All his men were killed, leaving only Juan Zamarrilla alive, who then fled. Fleeing, he found a hermitage on the mountain, and inside was the Virgin of Sorrow, the image that today is processioned in Malaga. The bandit hid himself under the Virgin's mantle, and as he entered, the soldiers did not see him, leaving without capturing him. Zamarrilla emerged from his hiding place and verified that they had left. In gratitude to the dolorous Virgin, he took a white rose. He placed it on the Virgin's chest and stabbed it with his own dagger. Zamarrilla was astonished, for the white rose then turned red. Repentant for his way of life, Juan Zamarrilla decided to leave forever for a monastery, dedicating himself to the poor. But one day, while begging on the roads carrying that red rose in his hand, he was assaulted by another bandit. Zamarrilla, now old, confronted him, receiving a mortal stab wound. Zamarrilla fell to the ground, and before dying, saw the Virgin appear before his eyes, opening the gates of heaven for him. When he raised his red rose to give it to her, the flower turned white again. It was the symbol that all his sins had been forgiven.